What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today I am talking about the latest offering from Sepulchral Curse, Crimson Moon Evocations. This also came out on February 28th, this time on Dark Descent Records, and this is the band's third studio full-length overall. This is my first time ever listening to this band. I got interested in wanting to excuse me, check this band out because I saw they were on Dark Descent Records, and I don't really talk a whole lot about Dark Descent on this channel enough, which that needs to change because that is a hell of a label. And this band actually used to be on Transcending Obscurity prior to this album, and now they're on Dark Descent. I don't know, I'd say they're about equal when it comes to reputation for music, so it's about like going from one great label to another. But this band is from Finland, and they are described as blackened death metal, and well, I would say that's accurate only a little bit. I would say this goes more closer to straight up death metal, or dare I even say melodic death metal at times, because man, this album's got a lot of melodies going on. As we kick things off with Wildfires, which is the shortest track of the album at just under 5 minutes. So these songs range between just under 5 to almost 7 minutes. So this is a pretty lengthy, in terms of the songs, album, even though it's under 40 minutes long. It's 7 tracks. But Wildfires, the first band I immediately thought of when I heard these like sinister, dissonant guitars and blast beats remind me a lot of Sulphur Aeon. I would say there is a lot of Sulphur Aeon going on throughout this album, but with nuances with influences from other bands on here too. But it's Sulphur Aeon I kind of get the most out of here and there on this album. But it grooves nicely. I gotta say, like, almost every song, there's a moment where it gets into like a straight up death metal groove, but these tremolos and crawling riffs that either ascend or descend are just gnarly as hell. And then the lead work, well, for the most part, you get kind of a balance between like true blues solos that aren't like flashy or technical, but they're more done to add more melody to the song, and lead melodies that aren't like standard guitar solos, but like lead melodies that kind of add more depth to the songs. And also, I would say there's portions on this album where you do get some nods of doom here and there because of how much slower it gets here and there on the album when it gets into certain slower sections. But again, it's the melodies that stuck out the most on this album. House of the Black Moon, immediately you get into these like evil riffs, and then tremolos and triplet chugs that kind of remind me a little bit of Immolation. Like there's nods to Immolation on this whole album when it comes down to some of these dissonant parts. But it gets into this lumbering groove, and yeah, like I said, groove is a big part of this album when it does show up. Other than that, it's just blunt force trauma, fast, blasty tremolos, whether they be death metal tremolos or the occasional black metal tremolo. But one thing that stood out on this track in particular was the bass work. Like there are some cool bass lines that show up here. And as far as like the lead sections go on this track in particular, might have been the most dynamic because you get like trade-offs with the leads, and even harmonies come together. And harmonies come in a lot more as the album progresses. The Locust Scar, this one just goes right for triplet chugs galore, like vicious triplet chugs and tremolos that feel like Morbid Angel, but also a little bit of like incantation as well. But you also do get like a doom rhythm with melodic guitars on top. Even an Immolation groove comes in, but with those classic atonal guitars. Again, more harmonies, and dare I say, the melodies towards the end, they kind of get borderline triumphant, which is unusual, but I think it really works on here, and it adds another dynamic to the song. Beneath the Dismal Tides, immediately atonal melodies that remind me of Immolation, but it builds up nicely. Actually, this and Empress of the Dead, the following track, both build up tension really nicely. But with Beneath the Dismal Tides, you get more of those harmonies showing up, some sinister tremolos that almost get towards blackened tremolos, but it does get actually a little bit thrashy with the rhythms. Like you get more of that like standard thrash, or as they call it, the skank beat that comes in, but it also gallops pretty well. Dissonant tremolos that kind of give it a little bit of that black metal edge. I also love how the drums build up tension into the breakdown, and you also get a breakdown on Empress of the Dead, but with Empress of the Dead, it starts off with a dissonant melody that honestly reminds me more of Mastodon, because it kind of has a little bit of a prog flair to it. But you also do get your like classic descending low end tremolos. But I will say this song was probably one of the more unique tracks on the album, because you get almost a power metal moment where the drums get into this like big gallop, and there's these soaring melodies that come in out of nowhere that makes it kind of have a little bit of that power metal vibe, which I would say more or less kind of adds to the melodic death metal aspects on some of these songs. And even the ending, it gets more towards black metal a little bit with the guitars. The Currents of Chaos, again, you're just going for like triplet chugs and atonal melodies, but this was probably the most melodic song on the album. Like, yeah, you get some vicious, gnarly, nasty riffs, but for the most part, I would call this a melodic death metal song. Like, there's melodic hooks all throughout, and even some great harmonies. And then you get into the closer, Crimson Passages, which returns back to the Soul for Aeon vibe with those like more sinister, dissonant melodies, more groove, and gallops nicely. And then at the end, fast thrash beat, but with more of those black metal tremolos that show up to kind of just add more darkness overall, even though the album itself, for the most part, is pretty dark as it is. But the production on here, I actually really enjoyed the production. The mix was fairly well balanced. I like how gritty it sounds, but yet it sounds well recorded, which is an important factor for an album that just kind of goes for melodies and tremolos and groove and blasting and chugs. Just this album, I would almost call it a bit of a death metal sampler platter here and there, because there are times where it does get a little bit more technical, but not towards tech death, if you ask me. If I were to find any complaints really at all, I honestly can't really think of any. So I'm going to go ahead and give this another 4.5. This is, I mean, already we're kicking off this new year with a bang with some killer releases, and this is just yet another one added to the list. So if you are a fan of, I would say in particular, Soul for Aeon, but if you also like Immolation, Incantation, maybe even some of those dissonant melodies of Mastodon, and even some mellow death, kind of like Hypocrisy, check this out. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But until next time, thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.